When my husband died earlier this year, something inside me broke. But not in the way you'd expect. It wasn't just grief. It was like waking up from a dream. A long, strange, suffocating dream that had lasted my entire adult life. For the first time in 40 years, I could finally see clearly. My choices, my pain, my silence, and the terrible price my children paid for it. I realized I'd been asleep in my own story, and my children lived the nightmare I refused to see. I was 16 when I met him. Just 16. Still a child playing dress-up in my mother's clothes, dreaming of romance like the movies. He was 29. 29 years old. A grown man. And I was a girl who still asked permission to go to the market. But in Cuba in those days no one blinked. My parents called him responsible. Mature. A good provider. They said he would take care of me. And I believed them. Because what did I know about love? I only knew what I was told. He had a car. His family owned a television. These things seemed enormous to a girl who had nothing. I thought I was the luckiest girl in the world. By 18 I was married. By 19 I was a mother of twins. 2 beautiful boys who became my whole universe. But even in those early days there were signs. The way he corrected me in front of others. The way his jaw tightened when I laughed too loud. The way he needed to know where I was, who I spoke to, what I said. I told myself it meant he cared. That he was protective. That this was what marriage looked like. I learned quickly. Keep your voice soft. Keep your eyes down. Keep your thoughts to yourself. And slowly, quietly, without even noticing, I disappeared. The girl I was, the one who used to dance in the rain and sing off-key. She vanished. And in her place stood a shadow. Silent. Obedient. Perfect. But silence has a price. And my children would pay it. The years blurred together like watercolors in the rain. 7 children. 7 souls I brought into a house where fear lived in every corner. I can't remember what that house looked like. Isn't that strange? I lived there for years but my mind has erased it. Blocked it out to protect me from remembering what happened inside those walls. But I remember every single birth. Every contraction, every breath, every first cry. Because in those moments, just those moments, I felt alive. I felt like more than his wife. More than his possession. He said hospitals were too expensive. So I gave birth at home. All 7 times. My mother helped me deliver them in our bedroom. I was 26 when my body finally said, enough. Something went wrong with the last baby. Internal bleeding. Emergency surgery. The doctor said I couldn't have any more children. I remember lying in that hospital bed staring at the ceiling and feeling something I hadn't felt in years. What kind of mother feels relief when she's told she can't have more children? But I did. Because somewhere deep inside I knew I couldn't bring another soul into that house. My children grew up in silence. They learned early just like I did, not to make waves. Not to cry too loud. Not to ask too many questions. Not to make him angry. But silence doesn't protect you. Silence only makes the violence invisible. He hurt them. In ways I didn't always see. In ways I was too afraid to acknowledge. In ways that would mark them for the rest of their lives. And I did nothing. I told myself I didn't know the extent of it. That if I just kept the peace, kept him calm, it wouldn't get worse. I told myself I was protecting them by staying. That leaving would be harder. More dangerous. I told myself lies. Because the truth was too terrifying to face. The truth was, I was failing them. Every single day I stayed silent, I was choosing him over them. Choosing my own survival over theirs. And they knew it. Even as children they knew. When we came to America I thought everything would change. He promised it would be different here. A fresh start. A new life. And it did change. But not in the way I prayed for. Our children went to American schools. They saw other families. Other fathers. They learned words like rights and freedom and no. And slowly they started to fight back. My oldest son left home at 17. I still hear the slam of that door in my nightmares. He looked at me before he left, really looked at me, and said, "You could have stopped him. You chose not to." He was right. Another son found escape in the streets. Drugs numbed what home had carved into him. I watched him slip away inch by inch and I couldn't reach him. How could I? I couldn't even reach myself. My daughter became pregnant at 16. 16. The same age I was when I met him. And I saw the cycle repeating. the way trauma echoes through generations. He lost that baby. And something in her died with it. My children scattered like shrapnel from an explosion. Some stayed close but couldn't look me in the eye. Others disappeared completely. They hated him. For what he did to them. For what he did to me. For the childhood he stole. But they also hated me. For staying. For my silence. For not being strong enough to leave. And I understood that hate. As I hated myself too. Life has a cruel sense of irony. The man who controlled everything. Who decided what I wore, what I ate, when I spoke. Lost everything. The job. The money. The respect. The power. He grew old. Sick. Dependent. And suddenly he needed me to survive. I became the provider. I worked 2 jobs. Sometimes 3. Cleaned houses. Cared for elderly strangers with more kindness than I'd ever received in my own home. And he withered. I'd imagined that moment for years. When the power would shift. When I'd finally be free. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like emptiness. Because by then I'd lost everything that mattered. My children barely spoke to me. My youth was gone. And the woman I might have been? She died decades ago. When he died, I didn't know how to feel. There was grief, not for him but for the life I'd wasted. There was guilt, oceans of it drowning me. There was anger, at him, at myself, at God for letting it all happen. But mostly, she exhales slowly. There was silence. The kind of silence that comes after a war. When the bombs stop falling and you're still standing. And you don't know if you're grateful or guilty for surviving. After he died, the fog began to lift. I started to see my life clearly, really clearly, for the first time. I looked at my children. Scattered. Broken. Some I hadn't spoken to in years. I saw their pain. Their anger. Their trauma. And I understood. I put them in that house. I kept them there. I chose him every single day I stayed. My oldest son wouldn't take my calls. My daughter spoke to me, but there was a wall between us made of all the times I didn't protect her. One of my sons told me, "You were the adult. You were supposed to save us." And he was right. They were all right. I know what they think of me. They think I was weak. Complicit. That I loved him more than I loved them. But what they don't know, what they can't understand because they're too hurt to see, is that I was a child too. I was 16. 16. I didn't know what marriage was supposed to be. I didn't know I had rights. That I could leave. That help existed. I was taught that a wife endures. That a mother sacrifices. That suffering in silence is love. And by the time I realized those were lies, I was in too deep. Too afraid. Too broken. Too convinced no one would help me. But that doesn't erase what I did. Or what I didn't do. I started therapy. At 62 years old, I walked into a therapist's office and said, "I need help. I've needed it my whole life." We unpacked decades of trauma. The abuse I suffered. The abuse I witnessed. The abuse I enabled by staying. Forgiveness is not easy. And I don't know if my children will ever forgive me. But I started with myself. I looked in the mirror and said, "You survived. Now you have to live." I got a job. A real job with my name on the paycheck. For the first time in 40 years I opened my own bank account. My hands trembled when I signed my name. Not from fear. From freedom. I learned to drive. At 63 I got behind the wheel and drove myself somewhere. Nowhere important. Just the grocery store. But it was mine. My choice. My freedom. I started laughing again. Real laughter, not the nervous kind that used to follow his jokes. I started praying again. Not from desperation but from gratitude. I started living. Now I live with my mother. She's older, frailier, sometimes she forgets where she is. And I take care of her. Every time I help her to bed, every time I brush her hair, every time I hold her hand, I realize something. I've become the woman I needed 40 years ago. Strong. Present. Protectorate. Just 40 years too late. My youngest daughter visits often. She's the only one who still speaks to me regularly. One day she said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." And I cried. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Because that's all I ever wanted. For my children to be proud of me. To see that I was trying. That I'm still trying. We talk about healing now. About forgiveness. About breaking cycles. And I tell her what I've learned. You cannot undo the past. But you can choose what it teaches you. And you can choose who you become after it's over. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you're in a home where fear lives in the corners, if you're staying for the children while they're being hurt, if you're telling yourself it's not that bad, that you can handle it, that you have no choice, please hear me. You do have a choice. And your children are watching. They're learning from your silence that abuse is normal, that love looks like control, that they don't deserve better. I know you're scared. I know leaving feels impossible. I know you think you're protecting them by keeping the family together. But you're not. I thought I was protecting my children by staying. But what I really did was teach them that their safety didn't matter, that their pain was less important than keeping the peace. And now they're adults with trauma they'll carry forever. And they look at me with a question I can't answer. Why didn't you save us? Don't let your children ask you that question. Don't wait until it's too late. To my children wherever you are, I know I failed you. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I can never give you back the childhood he took and I didn't protect. But I need you to know. I see it now. All of it. And I'm so sorry. You deserved a mother who was brave. Instead you got one who was broken. But I'm not broken anymore. And if you ever want to talk, to scream, to tell me everything I did wrong, I'm here. I'm finally here. I don't know if healing is possible for us. I don't know if they'll ever forgive me. And honestly, I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. But I know this. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the woman they needed me to be. I will speak up now even though I was silent then. I will tell my story even though it makes me the villain. Because if even one mother sees this and leaves, if even one child is saved because someone finally chose them, then maybe, my children's suffering wasn't completely meaningless. My name is Maria. I'm 64 years old. And I woke up from a 40-year nightmare. I can't undo the past. But I can live in the truth now. And to every woman still sleeping in that nightmare, wake up. Before it's too late. Before you lose what matters most. Your children are waiting for you to choose them. Please, choose them. You deserve safety. They deserve protection.